Mike, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for coming along.
Thank you for the invitation.
Before we continue, I just want to ask, as someone who doesn't speak very good French at all, how do you pronounce your family name?
My family name is pronounced Bouteiller.
Bouteiller. Okay.
Butler. In English, if we find an equivalent word, probably with the etymology of the word, yes, butler.
So could you give us a little introduction of yourself? Where did you grow up? Where did you come from? And I'm going to talk about your story today.
To make it short, I mean French, 56 years old, 3 kids, living in China probably for something like 20 years. As a business executive in pharmaceuticals, and I was working for a French company called Ipsen as a GM for China and then a head for all Asia. So before that, I was working in HEC School of Management.
So it was HEC Paris in the past?
Exactly. I understand you want to ask me one of the questions about when did I first was in contact with the school. It's back to the 1990s when there was nothing around the school. So there was just the building, the school, and I came here to see one or two good friends and colleagues that were doing their term here. So from a professional point of view, probably I have three chapters to my book, Professor write book, so I use this image.
Can you introduce the first chapter? Where does it begin? How does that go?
As a professional guy, I started to work for HEC in very end of 1989, and at that time we have the school wanting to develop a very specific research center focusing on the Far East and economic development, and of course companies, strategy, organization, and so on. So we created what was called at that time HEC Eurasia Institute. And we produce a lot of research, knowledge, and so for probably 20 something European companies and Asian companies wanting to go to Europe. And it was a kind of two ways institute, and but at that time I was working for, I would say, any kind of business. It was the car industry with Peugeot and Citroën, cement industry with Lafarge Copé, and so on, and then pharmaceuticals. That company was called Ipsen. And it is one of the reasons in 2001 I came here to China. They asked me as a joke, Eric, don't you want to leave the school and see something else? And I said, okay, well, let us try. And so I ended up in Tianjin in 2001.
Right, so was that your first time you came to China, or?
No, my interest for China is...
back to the 90s?
Dating back to 1984-5, when I was very interested by the language. By the character. So my learning of Chinese started by myself, not in a formal training. I was still, at that time I was still in high school, and I wanted to learn all languages. I've learned other old languages, Egyptian, the hieroglyph.
Right. Hieroglyphics.
Yeah. Thank you for the pronunciation.
But it's famous for its difficulty to read, not just to pronounce. So exactly. That's very impressive.
I also learn a little bit of Akkadian or Sumerian, the very cuneiform writing.
Yeah,
so and then
least.
Continuing my own journey, I started to learn some Chinese, Wen.
Wow! So you basically set out to learn some of the most challenging and hardest languages on the planet.
Exactly. I was, and I am still very interested by old language and the graphics part, the drawing part of it. Then I went for formal training in Chinese, 1986 something.
Did you study in France, or did you have a component based in China?
No. I studied everything in my hometown in Strasbourg, so quite limited resources at that time. No Chinese people, no Chinese teacher, of course. Wow. So I was using by correspondence. I was writing, I was receiving books. I have to read, I have to record my learning of Chinese, and then we send it back to the school. So my speaking Chinese was absolutely terrible, because I was interested by the writing. I'm not able to pronounce anything. And so I found a scholarship to go to Taiwan. So I spent three years in Taiwan, where I really start to have would say, learn seriously Chinese and practice it.
What kind of people were you studying alongside then? Because obviously back in the 80s, I think Chinese language was obviously like a niche area of study.
Underlying interest was not at all management or pharmaceuticals. It was really about archaeology, old history, the old language. So it is why I started Chinese.
Right.
So at that time, basically nobody was interested by China and wanting to come and stuff.
That's really amazing, actually. Kind of moving forward to the next important chapter of your career, how did that begin and what were you doing at that time?
In 2001, I was joining a company, moving from theory to practice, I would say. And at that time, this company was just finishing its investment in China, and they were hitting a wall. I mean, the business was no more moving, no more sales. I mean, the spirit of the team just vanished, and there was a real worry by the company that they have to close and say, okay, Rick, go there and try to make the business back. And that was in 2001. So I arrived in Tianjin, where I spent altogether probably 12 years. And in fact, I found a few keys, a few solutions for the organization, and it went very well. And this affiliate became the number 2 global business for Ipsen.
How do we get to the third chapter?
The second chapter lasted for almost 20 years. I've also been very involved in industry association in pharmaceuticals called RDPAC, RDPAC. I was a member of the board, but also then vice chairman and then chairman for 2 years.
You mentioned earlier that initially you had kind of this academic interest in language. How did you therefore transition into being in the healthcare industry?
It's by chance, and I would like also to thank again the guy that really bet on me when he said, okay, Eric, try. I am not a doctor in medicines or in pharmaceuticals, so I did not and I would not dare to save anybody's life. But you need someone in the organization to maintain, I would say, to organize the consensus and the alignment in order to have the organization moving and to put all the pieces of the business together and to get results. So that's why I call myself a shopkeeper or the mason, taking bricks and cements and packing the whole thing in order to build the house. So in a way, to answer your question, there is no need to really be an expert in pharmaceuticals or in medicine. My Ph.D. is not in pharmacy, but I have some good understanding of what is needed today in order to make a profitable business in these areas. I rely on my learning capabilities, and maybe it is where you can link it with my old interest in archaeology.
Obviously, part of your expertise is being a kind of bridge between what a European company would, their mentality, and then how to match their expectations or their ideas about doing business in China. Is that a big part of what you do when you say you're not focused on pharmaceuticals as such, more the details of actually making a business work in perhaps a different environment to where it started out?
Well, when you're the head of a big organization, in between your headquarters or other affiliate and the China organization that you represent as a head, yes, you definitely need to be a bridge. If you only stick to your job description and what you have to do daily on your desk or on your keyboard, you will not succeed, and it will not last very long. And back to the other side of my job, that was also to work in the industry association. In a way, it's the same, because you don't work with one headquarter, you work with several headquarters. You work also with sister associations headquarters. So you have Washington DC, you have people in Tokyo, people in Brussels. All these people, you need to explain them what is happening, and you need to have them often on the phone, but also to provide them the right level of information, also to invite them to some meetings. And so in order for them to really understand better what is happening.
It must be a challenge to deal with all the different cultural baggage which each region brings and its own interpretation of China.
And that was from I think from a difficulty point of view, that was the most difficult job I had. And job, it's not really a job because I was doing that pro bono, right? Elected by my peers, and of course no salary. So that was my night job. But you're right, probably you have 7, 8, 9 different cultures. And you have something that is even more difficult. You have no hierarchy to get consensus alignment. You understand? Because I work with my peers. So, and Ipsen is a relatively small company compared to, I don't know, Pfizer, GSK, AstraZeneca, and a few others. So I had to use other ways to communicate and reach alignment. Because I think what is the most important word to succeed in this area is to build alignment in order to create organized action among these people, who, by the way, also have a very strong ego. It's culture different. There is no hierarchical, no system that help you, and all these GMs or CEO and so have very strong ego. So it's very difficult to coach them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call me the teacher. And I think it's, in fairness, it has a role because at that time I need to speak often, like in a small classroom where you have to repeat and repeat and repeat in order to be sure that all pupils have heard. It's not professor, it's teacher. Sometimes I have also to be very, very strong on people and say, okay, this is not the right behavior. You stop. So I had a little bit that kind of role and
was this in the boardroom, you mean?
Yeah, in the boardroom. Yeah, in the boardroom. When the door is closed, you can do a lot of things. When it's open, you have to behave a little bit different. But sometimes you have to be. And as far as you get results for the association, people understand the need for discipline at the end. And so that probably was the key of my success, is to bring some clarity on where we had to go and also discipline.
How did you actually become part of CEIBS? How did you get your current role?
So that's maybe my third chapter. So the Ipsen company kept me in China 17 years, which is by any standard very long. I enjoy it very much, but a normal executive is here for 3 years, 5 years, maybe you renew it once, but they asked me at the end to stay very, very long time. And when they decided, or they wanted to have me back in Europe, I didn't want it, as simple as that. And so I decided to leave the company and to work as an advisor for several companies. Alors, today I only work in healthcare industry because there's so much to do. My areas are strategy, partnership, organization, talent management, maybe market access, 4 or 5 areas. And one day I met with our friend Ding Yuan, who said, okay, but why not teaching a little bit here at the school? And it's how I started as doing one elective.
So what's your actual position, Eric? You're an adjunct professor.
Correct.
What does that actually entail? Because I think some of the people watching might not be completely familiar with this term.
One of the things I like in CEIBS is that we have, I think, a good balance in between, I would say, theoretical research and practice. Okay, and probably I have some mix of that in my own career. 10 years in HEC and 20 years in industry. But if I have to choose a focus, I am, and I think my students are like it very much, is that I try to bring as much as possible the industry voice, picture, connection, and so my teaching. So I see my role as an adjunct professor is that probably I'm not mainstream. My aim is not to create, I would say, a new theoretical knowledge. So I'm interested to work on some specific topics. For example, in pharmaceutical work is about pricing, market access, require.
Are these examples of what you're teaching?
No, these are fields. I think there is a need to really go deep in theory and more academic research. So I am very open for working with colleagues on that. But the most part of my teaching is probably to work on the practical side of this industry, because our industry, and it's true for pharmaceuticals, but also healthcare at large, requires, as we said at the beginning, a very high intensity of very specific knowledge.
CEIBS launched the Smart Healthcare Institute recently. Is that something you're involved with that?
Not yet today, but it's clearly a very important part, because back to the regulation and the very fragmented state of this industry, digital is bringing a lot of rationale to move, change, and transform. So it's a clear engine drive for the future development. And of course, China has so much to propose in this area that there are a lot of things to do in this field.
Okay, but you're normally based in Beijing campus, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am based in Beijing, and I go wherever is needed by my customers, of course, because I still continue to do a little bit of advice, but of course also as the school requires. I mean, if it is in Beijing, I do it in Beijing. If it is in Shanghai,
do you actually do lectures in Chinese?
可以啊，没问题啊，
没问题，
我们可以讲中文的，不了不起啦，还在学习。
Because I think there's so few Western academics or experts would, conduct a lecture in a form in Chinese language. How is that received?
I think it's very well received. Sometimes, even when I do a course for MBA or GMBA in English, obviously, sometimes I jump to Chinese because I want to be sure that people understand what I mean. Maybe it is due to my French accent also. But I think to be able to do that is important. And I think we have to help our students to raise their language capabilities. To use Chinese to help them is one of the things, but it's only a tool. I dream for our students to all be good or very good in international language. We have to remind them that if they want to be successful, they have to go outside, they have to master English or French. But we need our students to be very strong in international language, to understand what is happening outside.
I think one of the topics which comes up, I know in some parts of the CEIBS community, especially maybe the MBA students, is, to what extent is Chinese language necessary to be successful in business in China? What's your views on that?
In my case, what I have done, back to the transformation and the work we have done for Ipsen, definitely my ability to speak Chinese was very useful. It's true about understanding the issues. Okay, I was able to talk directly with people. Probably they explained better what was happening than to the previous general manager, who was French, probably did not understood what was really going on. It was also very important also in terms of communication with our stakeholders. We have to talk with the government, we have to talk with hospital leaders, we have to talk with doctors, and you have to make them understand what you say. And beyond the technical part of the language, it is also kind of maybe attitude, showing you are ready to understand what is happening here. So then people have a better view and a better interest and are more ready to listen. Altogether, Chinese language in my job and success in Ipsen, I think it has been extremely important.
Do you think it's essential?
For me at that time, yes, definitely. Now, as a more general, I would say, depends on the industry, because if everybody is very fluent in English and you are in a very connected industry, probably the necessity to speak Chinese is probably less important. If you are in an area, reverse, people are not that fluent and it's less connected. In our business, it was to talk with any doctors anywhere in China.
Yeah.
They do not speak English as a general concept. So it really depends on the thing. But yes, I think to speak Chinese is very important. And I continue on my side, on my kids. I force them to learn Chinese and whenever to have the characters and so in order to have some good ground in Chinese. It's a good investment in any case.
I think one of the arguments that comes up quite a lot is that as an international person who comes and studies in China, maybe they get an MBA, is that ultimately you're going up against native Chinese speakers in a job market, so that you're never actually going to be able to outperform them on the language aspect.
Either, and I don't think it's that important. I mean, depending on where you put your target. If your target is to have a good quality conversation and to have goodwill from your stakeholder. You don't need to be
so it's more like you said,
a very good speaker.
Yeah.
But in some areas, when you want to have a real impression, for example, on doctors, when we are discussing about a drug, if you're able to say the right word or the right concept in Chinese, then of course it's a different story. But not everybody needs to do that.
So Eric, thanks very much for giving us your time today. It's been a really entertaining personal history we've heard. Is there anything you want to say to add, or any message you have for the CIBS community?
Through my HEC work, but also my Ipsen work or days, was always about team spirit and the way you work with others. I mean, how do you pull people together in order to reach one specific action or target? And I would like to do the same here. I'm very happy to bring my pharmaceuticals or healthcare little experience, and would be delighted to work with other colleagues on these areas. So as we are talking to our community, very welcome. If you have any interest in healthcare or pharma, just give me a call and let us do, I don't know, whatever seminar, webinar, or why not even writing articles together. I am very interested. I would like to contribute more in that area with to our community. Oh,
great. Well, I think your phone's going to be ringing hopefully in the near future with
I will tell you.
Cooperation.
I will tell you if you have a good channel.
So thanks for coming in, Eric. It's been really entertaining to hear your story, and I'm sure we'll get lots of good feedback from your appearance on to the CIBS community.
All right. Thank you so much, Cameron, for the invitation.